Welcome to the February. It's February. It's the February studio chat here at Leader Games.
Valentine's month.
It's the first Tuesday. We did it.
We did. We hit it. We hit it.
Usually a second Tuesday of the month stream.
A secret actual first Tuesday stream. Sneak up on you.
No one's going to be here. It's good to see you all.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, we're going to do something a little different this time around. We'll do a very quick kind of studio update, just tell everybody what we're working on, and then we will get right into questions that y'all have been submitting. And if you've got questions for the chat, you're welcome to put them in there, and we can maybe group them in. But I think we've got plenty of questions.
Well, it's one way or another.
That's up to our producer.
Yeah.
But we're happy to have you all along for the ride here. So it's been a busy start of the year, I would say.
Yes.
Sometimes I feel like after projects end, like after a big project ends, there's like this kind of cool down where I always judge it by like, was I able to randomly watch like a lecture on YouTube? Mm-hmm. Did I stumble into an hour-long YouTube video,
and watch
the entire thing,
Sure.
and then like ended the day and felt like nothing happened today?
Yeah.
It has not happened.
Yeah. I mean, I had the funny because I was like left ARCs as you guys were finishing it. I haven't finished a project, I went from like working on ARCs to then just like also working on Ahoy, and I'm like, I'm still just like waiting to done.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And because of the timing of the Ahoy crowdfunding campaign, sometimes you would have been pulled into ARCs for graphic design, which is what happened with Oath, but it didn't happen this time.
Correct.
So there are a lot of reasons for why the studio stayed busy. One of the biggest ones is that just the way our calendar works, we had to get Ahoy ready, which is happening right now, and then we have upcoming projects, which I'm on one of them, maybe, and Josh is on the other one, maybe, and we're just pursuing them. And so as opposed to having a 6-month chill out, look at objects, do some new, normally after projects I try to really make sure everyone who's on the project has time to do design experimentation.
Right.
And I had to tell Josh and also myself that we didn't get that this time around. We'll have to wait until we finish our next project.
Sometimes, and it's funny because I'm often in that time, it's you kind of get to make something, but it kind of has to be this thing.
Yes, correct.
You get the creative leeway to make it whatever, but it should be this at least. So kind of where you guys are about that.
Yeah, because we both have things that that we have creative freedom within them,
of course,
but also it's a root expansion and maybe an Oath expansion.
Right.
They're gonna kind of look the way they're going.
Yeah, exactly.
But so we've got those things going on. We also, as we announced a few weeks ago, we brought Matt Martins on as community manager and event coordinator, and it's been great working with him. So we've been getting all the Gen Con stuff ready. And then related to that, we are in the final stages of our graphic designer search, doing interviews right now. So that's been eating up a bunch of time. It's good, and there's some other kind of stuff on the growth side that's being sorted out. So it's busy. This is kind of like a busy studio time.
Yes, yeah, for sure. More busy than most February, I'd say.
Yep, that's for sure. Oh, and then lastly, and this is a crazy thing. I didn't even think about this. We actually have a campaign NPC.
Oh yeah. I know. I'm waiting to play it once you guys are done actually checking it.
Yeah. Well, we had. So I don't know if we're allowed to. Which is a funny.
Well, that's fair too.
Yeah. So because
I respect that.
I asked Ann about it, and I think we're gonna do. We'll finish up our pack-up analysis.
Totally.
But we've already approved it.
Yeah.
Bearing the lead. We got the campaign NPC, which is awesome. We didn't know if we were going to get it before Lunar New Year or right after Lunar New Year. So the fact that we got it before is great. We won't know the final timeline for fulfillment for probably another month.
Yeah.
Because what happens is you get the NPC, everything's printed, but sometimes things need to dry, and they'll send you the NPC anyway because that it still needs to dry. And when I say dry, I don't mean wet. I mean it's. It is wet.
I mean, sometimes I think
it is
wet.
I think
sometimes it is just dry.
But sometimes the punch board will be slightly the wrong size because it hasn't fully dehumidified. But we did the check through the ARC's NPC, and it looks great. It looks really, really wonderful. We will probably do photos and a special little stream for the ARC's campaign where we'll go through everything. And then we're just kind of waiting.
Unboxing stream or whatever.
Yeah, we're just kind of waiting for the factory. But I asked Ann, I was like, oh, it's here. can I take it home and play it? And she was like, has to stay in the office.
Yeah, so definitely not home. Even I'm like, whoa, home.
And she was like, and actually we might want to keep it as a reference copy in order.
Like period, yeah.
Until we get the air freighted copies in a few weeks. So
that's probably the responsible thing to do.
Yeah, it is. We usually play, we usually play our PPCs a lot.
Yeah.
But with ARCs, because we did the PPC process early, we never really played the campaign PPC because the files were older.
Yeah, they were, they were already changing.
So that was another thing that was just made for a busy day, or busy week. So studio, everything's humming. Lots of ongoing projects. Ahoy finishing is kind of the big...
Yeah.
The big banner story.
Yeah, no, playing a lot of Ahoy, finishing up the faction balance. I know we have some questions about it and stuff too to get into more, but yeah, I mean, Ahoy is in its, its final development as much as final development can be a thing at this point.
We have to play it 40 times or something?
Yeah, I have to play a game a lot. I have to adjust some 1s to 2s and 2s back to 1s and 1s back to 2s again for a few weeks to decide how I want them. But yeah, no, it's going really well. The content has come out just really good. I'm really happy with the shape of it all. I think to no surprise, it adds so much to the game. It's pretty much the exact amount of content a second time. So it's,
exactly.
It's a lot of game to be added. So there's a lot for people to get into when they get it.
It's double the Ahoy.
Yeah.
And then for my part, I'm working on Oath expansion stuff. I'll talk about it a little bit when we get to the questions.
Totally.
And then Josh is working on some Root stuff, which is very exciting. Patrick has been working on his cooperative game, a little game about robots called Opus, which I'm sure he has posted about on various social media sites. You can follow it there. And Patrick has the day off today because this weekend he was at Protospiel.
That Protospiel,
So he got to play a lot of new games and also played Opus with a bunch of new folks. So I'm excited to get the Protospiel debrief from him tomorrow.
I'd like to be going to the next one when it happens again. I used to make much more of a habit of it, but very, very busy right now. But I heard the quality of games there was really good. From people that went, I heard everybody thought it was, if not as good, better than last year even. So that's always cool to hear.
I really wanted to go. I was at a digital con this weekend because I was at the HistCon Winter Quarters, which was great. Really interesting talks and panels. Cool. But no Protospieling for me. Okay, cool. Well, with that said, let's jump right into the questions.
Cool.
And we're gonna start with what's your favorite player count of any game you've worked on?
Ooh, I think I'm the typical, I think most of our games are best at 3-player. I do think that is, I think in general I'm a 3-player scrub who does believe it's the right amount of conflict, kind of like just what you want. 5 gets a little too much. I often also have 3 people, but I'd say I also think I'm probably I think I'm the biggest fan of 2-player exclusive games of almost anybody in the studio. Maybe you play a lot.
I play a lot. I
didn't want to come for you on it. But I know Ted is he likes 2-player games a lot, but he's I don't like exclusively 2-player games. I like ones that can do play 3 or 4 and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I'm I was going through my collection the other day because I was deciding stuff to bring in. Because I was I was a lot of games that are pretty much only 2-player in my collection here.
I think in the if I didn't count war games,
sure, of course.
I probably don't play that many.
Yeah, that makes sense. Of course, war games though.
Yeah, but almost every war game I play is 2-player.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. It's strange. I feel really mixed up about our player counts because I also really like 3 players because of the amount of control. I think it's also really nice from a testing perspective.
Right.
It's a great testing number because a 3-player game is gonna be a little faster. But you also have the most room to explore a weird strategy. But Patrick encouraged me at one point many years ago to play Root with 5.
Yeah. And
I've done it a few times. I mean, I've done it a lot in the course of testing, but outside of testing, I've played it a couple times. And it's just different. It has a totally different feel. It's it feels more like Dune.
Oh, sure.
It's just kind of big and woolly and strange.
In certain parts you just aren't gonna get. You're I just know that part of the map I'm not gonna be in or deal with probably. And
I think I really like arcs with 4, and the only reason why I'm highlighting that is we played so much arcs with 2 and 3, and I do like those accounts a lot. But 4, the way the 7s and the 1s work in the deck, I think is really interesting. And I also think some of the more political campaign content hits a little bit better.
I think that's fair. it's why I like the 3-player, even the 2-players, because it's so card gamey.
Oh yeah.
The 2-player, especially if you do 2-player non-campaign content.
And you're just with the draft. And
it's incredibly card gamey in a way that I think is pretty that I like quite a bit.
That was like the last part of ARCs you were really like involved in the dev team. Because I was gone for a couple weeks, and I remember putting on like you and Josh's desk, like play a bunch of 2-player games and just see if we need to change anything. And it was the result of that you came up with the suggestion to like have the ratcheting up of the influence values in the court.
Yeah.
Where you would take those as captives, which was a great change that worked great in multiplayer.
It also introduced the banks holding resources that you needed to compete against.
Right.
That was the big one too.
Which like weirdly like went out of the game and then came back in. And then came back in for it was a funny change. And then I really like, I mean, ARCs as a 2-player game I think is really neat.
I also love Fort at 2-player.
Yep.
Fort at 2-player I love it.
I think Fort,
fast, so quick.
I would have a hard time deciding between like Fort and ARCs is my favorite of the leader games, 2-player games.
Sure.
But I think those to me hit with 2 in a better way than anything else. Except Ahoy's 2-player is good.
Ahoy's 2-player is also pretty fine.
Yeah.
Ahoy's 2-player is mean.
Yeah, I think we have underrated, as a studio, underrated 2-player modes, but they are so mean that I never, when someone's like, I don't really like their games at 2-player, I'm like,
I understand.
Yeah, what you probably means you don't like it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the next question.
Oh, all right. How do you not get bored by playing the same thing over and over again? I was thinking about this the other day because Steam Next Fest is either like right now or going on, which is where you can get a bunch of Steam demos. I think the only reason it works for me is because I don't play a lot of other games repeatedly, actually. The games that I play, I'm a dabbler, as a lot of people know, and like Next Fest, demo, things like that are honestly my favorite content because I'm much more about like novelty over like nostalgia is something I often talk about in game design, right? Like I can play this Euro and like, oh, this Euro's a lot like this other one, and I'm like, I don't need to play it then, personally. I want the Euro that's literally like nothing and it uses a broken bidding mechanism, and I'm like, cool, let me play it once also, and then I'm good too. So like, I think it works because I don't treat my work board gaming is almost nothing like my actual personal tastes board gaming, where I very rarely go super deep. 15 plus, 20 plus plays on games that I own personally. Even I'm playing them a handful of times and being like, okay, that's neat. Yeah. I'd like to see what else I'm into.
It's interesting. I think for board games, I'm the same way. Like at work, I play the same board game over and over again. But when I started doing this, I stopped playing like lifestyle board games outside of work. So like I used to play a lot of 18xx, and I would just play 1889 just over and over and over again.
Sure, yeah.
And then that shut down. I still do that with video games, where I'm just a very monogamous player. I like still play.
Yeah, you're still StarCraft.
Basically, like the same 8 games I've been playing for like a decade.
Yeah.
It was funny. A few nights ago, one of my friends asked if we could play Off-World, which I hadn't played Off-World for a company in a while, and we started playing, and I'm like, oh, this is good. I could play this for a few months, and just the idea of like. Not one night, but like for a while.
I'll like do this, like this will like become a thing for me for a bit, and then I'll.
But like I just love really getting into a game. Like after every Off-World game, we were like talking about like what moves did you make? Like how are you playing? Because I think I right before I started doing it professionally, I crossed this line where I enjoyed talking about games more than playing them.
Sure.
And I'm still in that mode. Like
sure.
Like weirdly, this is an insane thing to say. Most video games I like don't enjoy playing. I almost like play them because I like talking about them.
Right.
And I'm having that right now as I'm going through a Dragon Quest game.
Sure.
It's a very good game, but I mostly want to finish it because I'm interested in it.
Okay.
As like a piece of game design.
Yeah.
And in terms of like my actual like button to button experience playing the game, I'm not having fun.
Right, that's fine. I'm like so on the like how much once I've harvested what I want out of the game, I'm done with it. Which is why like the demos are so perfect. I mean, I want to support the games that I like, but I'm like I sometimes play a demo for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I'm like that was awesome. I don't need more. That 2 hours of gameplay was like it piqued my brain, made me think about new things. I'm good. I'd like to now go solve a different puzzle. So I'd say that's why. The games I don't play a lot of other games a lot.
And you have to have build a relationship with it, and also we get bored of the games we play.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't want to be playing as much Ahoy as I probably need to be playing at this point.
We played so much Oath at the end of COVID that only now am I feeling like really ready to like go back and play a bunch of
Right, yeah. I know what you mean.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Leader games are often referred to being in conversation with each other. Nick, do you want to talk about the design development relationship between like Fort, Ahoy, and the expansions for the game, or
Yeah.
or pick any two that you think.
Right,
You're working on Ahoy, so
I mean,
what's the topic?
I think it's interesting. I always talk about. I mean, I think often you find connections between games after you work on them even longer. I feel like I'd say like Fort at the time when we did it, in terms of that conversation. The only conversation it had with our other games was like, it's like a weirdly interactive game for its genre.
Yeah.
Is kind of as far as that conversation went. The card play wasn't something that like we thought was, going to attract people who liked our other games. We thought the conversation was about interesting games. Right. That's kind of what would bring Fort to the people who enjoyed Root or Vast and stuff. Ahoy, though, on the other hand, is obviously like a talking down to Vast or something. It's trying to explain Vast or something a bit simpler, which I think is, again, came out more in development on it where, on first brush, even me, a lot of people are like, oh, Ahoy's like Root. Ahoy's like Root Light. And as we've played it more and more, and I talked to Greg, the designer, it's much more like Vast. The game is so much more like Vast than it is like Root. It's kind of crazy. The map construction, the way the victory conditions function, it just has way more in common with that type of asymmetric relationship. But to that point, though, the conversation again is like, how can you bring asymmetry down to be something a little bit more approachable? Right. And I do think like Ahoy will now re-inform anytime we go back to like, Ahoy has taught me so much about like maps and map mechanisms and position and whatnot. I mean, as Cole knows, like, I'm super interested in maps right now. It's like the next game I work on, I want to do something with maps actually, and like it's a part of our games that we don't, other than Ahoy, we don't really play with much. Right. The Forts or Roots maps are what they are. Right. They're point to point. But yeah, like the relationships that build out of Ahoy's map construction, I think, are something that I'd like to be able to see more of our games do in the future, because I think it's an element that none of them also do, while still being as asymmetric and all this other stuff that it is similar to.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, Ahoy's the development of the Ahoy expansions. I think in the same way that like Root, the working on Root Underworld really changed how I thought about Root, and the Ahoy's expansions are having the exact same effect, where it's just like there are things about it that I was taking for granted or not appreciating.
Yes, about the game, and like what it can do, what it can't do, what it's different than our line.
I mean, think about how we had a balanced conversation this morning about the interaction between a couple factions, and that conversation is so different from a balanced conversation in Root.
Yes.
Where Root, I feel like you've got like 3 knobs, and they're very like fine-tuned knobs, but you only have 3. And with Ahoy, there's tons of knobs. Yeah. And they sometimes behave in really odd. Yeah. Really odd relationships.
Yeah. The inputs and outputs are just completely different. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's kind of what I mean for that like conversations. And then in terms of I guess like the Ahoy expansion content, that goes to our kind of conversation with our players. I'd say where like. Players played the game, people enjoy it, but I think people are also interested to see the system expanded, what else it can do. I think more than we expected, our fans had expectations that it would be, in terms of content-wise, much more like our other titles.
Yes.
So we were like, okay, I guess content-wise it should be more like our other titles, and maybe we should have realized that. So it should have multiple characters to play. It should have other ways to explore that kind of base game, which is the reason we're doing the expansion even, was players feeling like, okay, that's cool. Give me more. I want to play a new character. I want to see see it from a different angle. So that's like why we do expansion content, hopefully.
Yeah, I think so. All right, let's keep them rolling. Ahoy, when are we gonna see the PMP files?
A PMP file update. I'd say soon. I'd like to be able to. You're right. Great. You guys know soon. No, I'd like to say probably by the end of this week or early next week. If the I'd say like we can update the files again for the whole backer kit page and whatnot. The things are far enough along that any conversations that people want to have about the content is now would be relevant.
Yep.
Prior to this, there was like with me only being kind of the main one on the project, simply would be too much to try to handle the entire public facing side of it. So
right. Well, and we might post for like so when when the player boards are posted, Josh will have gone through.
Yeah, that's what Josh is doing
text,
currently. Exactly.
Right? Yeah, this is what he's doing this week.
Yep.
And then we can actually get comments on much more polished text.
Cut text rather than what I wrote, which have to be rewritten anyway, or would have to be until now. So yeah, I'd say hopefully end of the week. And yeah, I'd love feedback. Anything people want to provide at that point is more than welcome. Obviously, once that's public again. So
yeah. All right, let's keep going. So have we ever considered publishing a making of book or similar, like how studios do coffee table books? So this is an interesting question. So we have had like the art book conversation.
Considered, yes.
Considered, yes. So here's, there are two things to bring up, and I wanted to flag this question because it's something that we have talked about and people have asked about it. So there are two concerns, or there are two things. One, the art that Kyle draws, he draws small. And so this is like a funny thing about art books where I've talked to Kyle where he's like, the illustration of the root cover is basically just the exact same size as the root cover. And many of the card art is actually drawn at like roughly the right scale.
Right.
Now we can turn that into an art book. We can do kind of like zoom in. So I think Kyle is worried that it's not actually going to look as good as people are going to think it's going to look.
Well, I think, and I'd say like on the opposite side, I think even like when people talk about the making of, I think what this person wants honestly is like, they want like a book that's it's got a photo of you hunched over a desk, blah blah blah, with a little with a write up from you about what you were working at the time, converting your design diaries to something that's publishable in a book format. I think to my point is like we've considered it. Books are just a ton of work.
There's just a ton of work.
There's a ton of work. Cole needs to make games.
Yeah, so
I can't have it.
This is the core. So this is the other part of it, which is
who would write it?
Books take a long time to do well. I think that I don't want to cast shade, but it's not. I don't think it's that difficult to write a bad book. But to actually write something good, I think takes time. It takes about as much time as a game.
Right.
And I'm sitting on. I was looking at the Oath journals are about 100,000 words. Not the Oath. The Arcs ones are about 100,000 words. The Oath ones are a little bit smaller, and then the Root ones are smaller still. But I would love, and these aren't the design diaries. This isn't stuff that you've seen. It's just the internal writing of it.
Right.
I read one of my favorite reads from last year was this book by Jordan Mechner called The Making of Prince of Persia, which is just his journal that he had as a high school and college student writing about the process of making the game. Right. And it is great. It's such a lovely document about just the highs and lows of game making. And I would love to put together some kind of document. I'm hoping that as soon as I get a window, a cool down window, I'm gonna start looking into actually putting together all those things.
Sure.
Because I don't know, I've been here for 6 years or something. I would love to do a Leader Games 10-year book or something.
Yeah. I also feel like it's something you would almost want to be, at least for myself, I would want it'd be helpful to know if you were doing it alongside a project is where it's going to be almost easier than retroactively, I feel like. If you were I'm working on my new game called Loop to Loop, and it's I'm gonna be, but in the same way, what that would trade off for is that means maybe the public's getting less of the totally open design process side because we want to keep
classic old people, not old people, but people from 100 years ago, whenever they write their journals or publish their diaries, they're always prepared for publication. It was always clear that Dear Diary, let me introduce you to these characters.
Right. Because you would want, and that would mean you'd want something that's cool in the book, right? Learn about the thing that's not just on BGG.
When I was reading the Jordan Mechner book, I realized that I was oftentimes using my design journals as scratch paper, and they were real messy. And so when I read that book, I was oh, let me fix this. And I actually went back to the parts I could remember and I just went through and took my design writings and just kind of expanded them. If I read this in a decade, this section should make sense
to me at least.
At least to me. So kind of build it out.
So I could then regurgitate it again.
But I think a book project would be great. I would love to do it. There's a funny tension where I kind of want to write about games more generally than just stuff I worked on because there's something. It's a Midwestern sensibility. I want to write on my own shit.
I know what you mean.
But I wouldn't I wouldn't mind doing it. I read this.
No, I think it'd be cool if people knew more about how it works. It's one of those I have no idea how to express it type of thing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
In a crazy way. It's I would if somebody came in and was I'll just write down what Nick's doing and turn that into something reasonable. Yes. But it's very hard to express even in an interesting way.
We have had for several projects someone who from a video background being hey, I want to make a documentary about X. Even Root, someone was I kind of want to make a Root documentary.
Yep.
And in retrospect, I'm That would have been good.
Yeah.
Like it was a wild,
Right.
that was a wild time.
Yeah.
There's an amazing book I'm reading. So here's a deep cut. As I'm getting ready to as I'm working on the Oath stuff, I've been reading a lot of like old weird fantasy and sci-fi, just kind of get in the mood.
Get back in it.
And I am reading this book called The Book of the New Sun by this guy named Gene Wolfe. It's like this crazy dying Earth, far future book. It's great. Great, but it's like a hard read. Anyway, he wrote this other book, which I only learned about this year, called The Castle of the Otter.
Okay.
So he was like in the middle of publishing this essentially like Lord of the Rings scale, like massive work, very dense. And then he wrote this other book, like at the exact same time, which was kind of like why I think my book is cool, and also here's kind of the story of how it got made. And it's like there's an element of humor to it, but actually, so I think sometimes people read Castle of the Otter and you're like, oh, this guy's full of himself. But like having read that after writing a lot of design diaries for the stuff we work on, I'm like, no, he's trying to explain this like weird thing that happened that allowed it to work.
Trying to do, that's funny.
Yeah, and so I'm finding myself sympathizing with him. But
that's really funny.
I would love to do more like studio transparency.
Yeah,
it's just you will even see. The last thing I'll say about it is, if you look at all the games that we've done, like there are a lot more Oath designer diaries than Arcs designer diaries, and that's because I was busier.
Yeah.
And both busier on the game and busier in the studio in general, so I didn't have time to like just knock out a 5,000 word essay every few weeks. And that was especially true for the development. Like Oath got dev updates, and Arcs didn't get any like dev diary updates. I'm gonna do one. I wrote a post on the Woodland Warriors about like why we shouldn't think about Arcs as a 4X game, and I think I'm gonna expand that into a longer piece for BGG News when the game comes out. So we have like a capstone designer diary.
That makes sense.
Anyway, all right, let's go to the next one. I can talk about books all day.
Yeah.
Dangerous. Well, actually,
perfect question.
It's almost like I organized these. So someone asked if we can get a peek into world building documents behind Arcs. So like, yes and no. There's a body of world building documents for Arcs, which is different than any other game that I've certainly worked on. And what I need to do actually right now is go back and rework them because the world changed a little bit over the last part of development. Those documents, I think someday, if I ever do like a book on Arcs and how it was made, I would like to fold some of those things into that book. Like, I'm not trying to be evasive. It's just going to take time, and also like that world building document was built sort of quickly and then used as a reference, so it needs to like be cleaned up.
Right.
But there's a lot of like Arcs has content map and backstory. So if the game finds its audience and people really like it, I kind of have already like preloaded. Like I kind of know like here are the next 8 plots I want to work on and things like that.
Sure. That makes sense.
Right.
Release the audio logs of the characters talking and stuff that you made.
Neuralink working. Right, next one.
Fort is pretty wee. Would you ever do a small or even smaller game in the future? Cole knows I love a small game.
Nick loves a small game.
I love a small game. I've pitched a game smaller than Fort. So I would say I don't think there is a for sure no for any definitive reason.
No, there's definitely not a no.
But yeah, it's again about finding the right things that fit with our studio and with what our audience want. I mean, not to say by any stretch that people don't like Fort. People love Fort.
Right.
You guys like it. We like it.
And Fort is like, I think that we don't give it its credit. Like, it is a great seller for us.
Fort's great. Yeah, people love it.
It's just those people aren't on the Woodland Warriors. It's it's the funniest thing because we look at our sales reports every week and we're like, Fort, killing it, doing great. And it's just, those people aren't on BGG and they're not on the Woodland Warriors.
And it's not surprising. I mean, we we talked about with that conversation thing earlier, it's like, it wasn't meant to have as direct of a conversation with like a root fan as are the games. It was meant to have a conversation with a person who likes interesting games. I think small games could potentially have a place here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep barking up that tree. So.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say too that Patrick's Opus is designed as a small game right now. I don't know if
but not smaller than Fort.
I think. I mean, less cards, small board. Like doesn't really have a board. I don't know. I think it's like a similar. Like I could imagine it in a really small box. I think Patrick's has talked about different.
There's a lot of ways you can build that out. Yeah, that's for sure. That's fair.
I like someone asked about the deduction game, which like if I didn't have to work. I mean, if I didn't have to work on the Oath expansion, and the reason I feel like I have to is because there's just a lot of reasons to do it.
Yeah.
I'd be working on the little deduction game. I have a concept for how I think I can make it work, and that is going to be explicitly designed for like a Ford-size box, I think.
I mean, again, bringing it back to one of our earlier questions, yeah, I mean, I have a couple prototypes for small, exclusively 2-player games. Again,
exactly.
back to my tastes thing.
Yeah,
I have a few
yeah,
prototypes for
well,
games that are only 2 players and are not that many pieces. So something to be interested in for sure.
Cool. All right, let's keep rolling.
Have you played anything recently that really shocked you, excited you, or your view on gaming?
Your view.
My whole view.
Your whole view.
Actually, I'll say, like I mentioned, I play a lot of video games. I find a lot of inspiration in playing them, checking out a lot of different stuff. And recently, I think everybody here should check out the demo for, I believe it's called Balatro, Balatro. Yeah, brand new, hot new, getting the fresh, coming cool here. But it's a deck building game where you use a traditional playing card deck, 52 cards, and you're trying to build poker hands. But you are able to, like a deck builder, modify your deck in funny, weird ways that only a digital game could do. You can you'll get a card that changes 3 of your cards to hearts. You can, add cards to your deck that'll give you bonus multipliers. So then on the output side, there's like a Yahtzee style, like, okay, you get 2 points for pairs times 1. You get this for a 3-pair, whatnot. So you can start tuning your playing card deck to like, okay, I get way more points if I build out flushes. So like, I'm trying to change all of my cards to hearts and like purge other suits from it so that I can like make flushes more easily because it multiplies by it.
Cool.
And yeah, no, using a traditional 52 card deck and just being like, yeah, put 3 kings in the deck, put 3 king of hearts in the deck. I don't like was to me such a. It was so simple, but I'm like, how have I not seen somebody do that yet? Yeah, very cool. I think that's
neat.
Yep, very clever.
That's neat. I played recently, so I've been trying to play more games that came out just currently. I think with board games, I have a tendency to play really old stuff.
Sure.
And so, and I realized, I'm like, oh, I have never, like I played Last Will and Shipyard many years ago.
Sure.
And so, but like, I guess people like Vladimir Suchi's stuff, so like I should play a Vladimir Suchi game. And like I have, mixed feelings about Vitalis games, but like maybe I should like learn how to play on Mars finally and like take it for a spin. So I have been trying to play more current games. And over the past couple weeks, I've played a bunch of this game called Sankore.
Oh yes.
Which was so.
It's pretty new, also, right?
It's
Sankore came out last year.
Yeah, it came out like 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
I think it's like hot off the presses. And it was so like so I did this odd doubleheader where I played a bunch of Sankore, and then I played a recent pack of a somewhat old war game from the early 2000s called Men of Iron, and I played the Norman Conquest pack, which is new. And Sankore, I'm like frustrated by it because it has a great theme. Like it's about building universities in Timbuktu. It has a great victory condition where like you're trying to like learn how all these different fields work, but like it has this very PAX-like, but did you politically maneuver your field to be important? I love, that's catnip. That's like the best thing for me. I love that. But it just kept feeling like the sum of the parts was like less than, or that the whole wasn't as valuable as the sum of the parts, which is weird because I love the designer. Lupiano is a great designer, and I love his game Kalimala. But Sankore kind of like shook me up in the opposite way, which is like, here's a game with a powerful theme and powerful victory conditions, but it was like I was so obscured in my way of manipulating the other players and like imagining what they were worried about, that it just didn't do anything for me. And then the thing that really shook me up is literally like that evening, I sat down with a very crusty, like old style war game rulebook for this game, Men of Iron. It's got hexes and counters. It's got flanking rules. I mean, it's there, and it's not that heavy of a war game, but it's definitely an older style war game, and it was so clean by comparison. Like, and this is not. I mean, there are lots of dice roll modifiers. There's lots of like things you have to worry about. But I found myself playing a few battles in the same time it took to play one game of Sankore. And it was so like percussive and rich and vibrant. And it just kind of it reminded me like why hex and counter games can be so good. And it was just a really good, like remember the fundamentals. And the fundamentals were like, you have to be able to, if a player does something, neat, the other player should like recognize that it's happening.
Sure.
It was like those kind of like basic
Interesting.
game state transparency stuff. So anyway,
That's a good one.
I'll bring it in because it is a 2-player game.
Sure,
and
yeah,
it takes an hour.
I'll mention one more quick one because I mentioned this also earlier. I was playing Final Girl again recently. I was playing the Christmas edition of it.
With the do trade art?
Yes, yeah, it's really pretty. The great, I like Final Girl, a lot of good things to say about it, but I think to me, the secret best part of it that should be in other games, and I don't know how you do it, is the occasional choice of buying multiple less valuable cards, because you know you're going to need more cards to fix your rerolls rather than always slamming max value into like the highest purchase. I'm like, and it happened to me like multiple times in that game, and I'm like, there's no other purchasing game where I can think of, love to be wrong, where I'm like, no, I'm gonna take I have $15, give me 4 of the small thing rather than 2 of just this and this, because I know that like I just need cards. Right. I need card economy in terms of.
It's a very like Arkham kind of question.
Yes, it is. It's very Arkham-y in that way, where it's like you can, your risk versus your thing, and I was like, oh yeah, Arkham's a good point. That's a good one. That does do it.
But like our Arkham is a fun. Like, you don't usually see that lesson outside of the LCGs.
Yeah,
for sure.
So I think those are great dynamics. Yeah.
Nice. All right.
What else do we got? Yeah, keep going.
So any plans for mini expansions for Root, like the Vagabond pack? So I will say to that end. One thing that's funny about running a Root expansion campaign is we like kind of know how they need to look. We know that we need an expansion, and then we know that we need small expansions for folks like you who want a little thing that they can add into the game. And so we have, I mean, that was one of the roles of the Hireling campaign, or the Marauder campaign, was to explore like Hirelings as one of those expansion types. But we will probably have another little one. Yeah,
so that was where Landmarks came in.
That's where Landmarks came in, the old one, or the Exiles and Parsons deck before that. And for the upcoming Root campaign, whenever that campaign is, we will probably have another small thing. Josh has floated a third deck as an option, which there's a way to do it.
I can see that for sure.
And I think that there's a couple of little ones that I won't spoil, but it is something that we're still working on.
Landmarks 2.
Landmarks 2. It's a funny, it's so interesting to me how a game line. There was a line in a Kevin Wilson interview from like a year or two ago where he talked about how at a certain point in his career he moved from just thinking about like how to design a good game to how to design like a good line for a game.
Sure.
And I feel like that has been where I've been putting, at least for my own part, a lot of thinking in the last 2 years of like, it's not just a game. It has to like support a line because then that lets players find other ways to support the game, which then translates into like dev staff and like people's actual jobs. And so like Root kind of already has that mapped in. We have got a way of doing it for ARCs, and we'll see if we can figure out how to do one for Oath.
Yeah, for sure. Because or else we have to backdoor it in like we did with Ahoy.
Yes, correct. Yeah, Ahoy, not initially designed.
Correct.
In the way that like, it's so funny seeing, this is a bit of an aside, but seeing
I brought it up.
the things that you're working on in Ahoy that have been tricky, and then going back to my office and being like, fighting the exact same problem in Oath, where I'm like, all these doors have been welded shut.
Well, I did make this game, didn't I?
Yeah, exactly.
I did finish this game once.
And I'm like trying to like,
yank them back open. Totally.
All right, let's keep it going. What led to the base Arcs court deck having 31 cards? And I'm going to say that there was like a caveat side part of this question, which is
bonus.
The Ahoy deck has 30 cards.
Oh, sure.
And so they were like, what's going on?
Or like people at the scores in our games.
Yeah, 30.
To adjudicate the scores in our games called.
Yeah,
we love 30.
There's a reason. There's actually like
kind of. Yeah.
There is like a reason. It isn't.
But it's like an ethereal read.
Well, no, it is. I mean, it has to do with ratios and proportions.
Yeah.
Because it's like 30. You can divide it by 6. You can divide it by 5. You have 15. And what ends up happening is you're like, well, winning scores are actually like, let's call it 26 to 32 or even to 36. Yeah. You start dividing all those numbers out and you get like really interesting ratios and relationships. Yeah. Which when you go down to be like, how many points can you score in a turn? And you're like, well, in this part, like this many in the early game, this many in the mid game, but then the mid game is then being expressed as a function of the early game. So you're like, if you score twice as many points in the mid game as in the early game, and twice as many points in the late game as the mid game, you're going to start ending up with a scoring system that once you've reduced it, actually produces scores of about 30.
Right.
It's like not.
Yeah.
So it is this thing where like we're running into number properties.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say I can go Ahoy quick at least. I mean, Ahoy's is actually a function of the game. You couldn't change it. I mean, there's 6 suits. So there's 5 of each card because there can't be 6 of each card because every card has 2 suits. It has the one that it's from and the one it delivers to, and you can't have a card that comes from and goes to itself. So there can only be 5 iterations of each card.
That's right.
And you just multiply that out. So that's just that one. There's no fun choice involved there, really.
Yeah. The ARCS one is interesting because it did shift a little bit. And originally, I had wanted it to be additive. I wanted like the Leaders and Lore pack to also have some more market cards. But Josh made a pretty effective argument that said the game is actually better when you're operating with a smaller variant. So like in a PAX game, the decks can get really goofy and the game will still function. And I think that's true in ARCS too, but we just had a dev conversation about it and we didn't actually have time to build more market cards anyway, so it ended up being kind of a foregone conclusion. But it has to do with, you think about those cards, there's 6 Voxes and then, 5 of each of the guild cards. And then imagine that you're going to see half of them in a game or a third of them in the game. How much variance do you want? And then, and I think Josh's argument was treat it like Root. Like you could do an alternate deck someday, but actually like always be building
this the
a
core
little cast of 31 cards. I think that's reasonable.
And there was just one he couldn't get rid of. It was going to be 30,
it's
but there was one that was just...
It's because we have 6 Vox cards. Like we had 5 for a long time, and then it just
that 6
up.
Vox. It said that 6 Vox card is what's getting to 31 actually.
It's the 6th Vox
Everything
card.
else is at 5
And it was
counts.
one of those like all the Vox cards have like jobs that they're doing for the deck.
You're like, I just can't cut. No,
I just can't cut it. I wouldn't mind a little deck boost because I like it when the deck gets chaotic.
Yeah, I'm sure. The game can support the chaos too.
It'll be okay. All right, let's roll.
That makes sense.
Who's played the most game of ARCS, Cole or Josh or Nick or someone else?
I remember I saw this one and I was going to throw out do you think there's a chance it's not a person in office?
No. I think it's someone in office.
I was wondering. But by in office, I mean Josh, of course. He's not physically here.
But like maybe not for long. I think
right. It's going to approach pretty quick. Yeah. It's you or Josh, certainly. I would guess.
I think it's probably me, just because Josh not being in the office and coming in digitally.
Yeah.
But the reason why I poked this question is. There's been a change in our playtesting patterns. That's so fascinating because during the Oath days, even when Oath was done, I would never have said I had played the most games of Oath.
Sure.
Because there were so many games being played because of all of our COVID testers.
Sure.
And that has changed. I was like looking, when I saw this question, I was like looking at through the playtest reports. And what I realized was like, no, it actually looks like a pre-COVID pattern where you get a group, they play a lot for like 5 to 10 games. I mean, that's actually really good. They play a lot for like 2 to 6 games. And then they tap out. And that was definitely true for ARCS. Like we had some playtesters who played a lot in the early days and they just kind of fell off. But I would guess that we will have played the most until the game comes out. And then when the game comes out,
suddenly, for sure.
Non-dev team members who played the most, like maybe Andrea.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Andrea played a lot of games.
Yeah, Andrea played a lot.
Okay, let's keep going.
Yeah, let's keep it on. ARCS Ahoy.
Yes. Has there been any discussion about Leader Games sponsored ARCS open play events?
Or even Root. Oh yeah, I saw this person. So this person also was
They're at the brewery.
They were local. Yeah. The person asked this. I'll just give an opinion here because I don't have the authority to establish IRL plays, so I can just say what I think and like. I'm a huge sucker for local play. I grew up playing TCGs. I went to Yu-Gi-Oh! Twice a week when I could. I went to my local game store and hung out with people and played in tournaments. So I'm a huge sucker for it. I think it's a really cool way to support the game. I also know how hard it is to do to host tournaments and run tournaments. I have a whole friend who runs tournaments. That's his whole thing. Cream City Convergence. If you're in Milwaukee in August, you should go to it. For Smash, it's my friend's tournaments.
Nice.
But yeah, no, like it's just it's such an undertaking to do that. But I think it's really neat. I would like to, is what I'd say.
Yeah, right before the pandemic happened, literally like the day before, the week before, I finished building. I spent about 2 days building 3 Oath kits in blue cases that were never played.
Yep.
Because we made them for our Wednesday groups.
Oh, yeah.
And because we used to have a Wednesday night playtesting group that was like pretty alive. We would get like 20 people sometimes. And so that's why I had to make 3 Oath kits, because we had, Patrick was working on something. I don't think 4 wouldn't have been happening yet, but we had one day where there were 3 tables of Oath running and 1 table of Patrick's.
Yeah.
And then we were, I mean, that was every Wednesday we were running big tables. I would love for that to start. I do not, like, part of the hiring we're doing right now is actually creating room for that to happen.
Yeah,
so that like Matt knows and other folks who might be coming know that, like, you might be in charge of like running the game nights, and I'll certainly like be able to do one a month or one every other month or something. In terms of broader tournament support, last August, myself and some people from the team went to RootCon in Portland, which was amazing. Yep. And I know I'm going to be talking to one of the organizers this week about potentially RootCon 2.0.
Very cool.
So cool. It was great. It was great. It's amazing to see a ton of people play stuff that you work on.
Yeah. It's insane.
Yeah, it is in fact just insane. All right, let's go to the next one. For Oath, am I still looking at making branches for Oath? What are the systems I'm most interested in tinkering with? So we'll treat this as
I'll get to learn too.
Oh yeah, exactly.
I was gonna say.
Well, you know some of it.
I know a little bit.
So
Cole's been in his cave though, working on it.
I've been in my cave, although mostly doing hiring evals.
Sure.
So for Oath, basically what I'm working on is I've divided the work up into modules, which I don't want to even call modules, but I've already committed my error, because they're meant to be played together. Yeah. But I'm dividing the work into parts, and I have parts at different levels of prototyping. So one part is this notion of lineage, where players have this little deck of cards that will determine like starting powers and potential benefits, and also potential like long-lasting curses that can be messing with you. So for example,
like old.
Yeah, or like what will happen is you have a trait which might say like, you're rich, you start with a bunch of money.
Yeah.
And then you have traits that are like little side quests in your player position that if you complete the condition, you add them to your lineage, so they might help you in the future.
Oh, sure.
But on the reverse side of that, there are also curses where it'll say like, hey kid, you just want some secrets? You can take them.
Sure.
But this bad card is now mixed in your family deck, and you might have to pay for it later.
I see.
So that's like the lineage system, getting it to behave properly. This will deprecate the reliquary. The reliquary for the Chancellor gets like kind of folded into this. Sure. Some of those traits behave in a different way. And then I've been rebuilding the Chronicle phase. So the Chronicle phase gets branched, where if the state survives, it goes in one branch, and if the state doesn't survive, it goes in the other branch. Sure. And so both of the Chronicle phases are individually a little simpler, much more dynamic. So like things such as, if you win as the Chancellor, you're going to get some benefits, but the decision of what the next victory condition is, that's controlled by the player with the darkest secret.
Sure.
Some of this is like riffing on ideas that I saw in Suit Wars, and also like my disagreements with Suit Wars, because I think Suit Wars is like, its heart's in the right place, but it's not quite firing the way I would want it to.
Sure.
But there's definitely like a much deeper and more dynamic Chronicle, and then to that point, there are 2 other things. One of them is in reworking the Chronicle, trying to create reasons why people might want a particular state to survive for more than one game.
Sure.
So this is like almost like a little tech tree of like things that you can unlock that are little benefits for how the state works, that if the state goes away, all that stuff gets lost. So you might want to try to keep it up. And then the last thing is working on these branches. And that is when you're picking victory conditions, you're also changing some of the core rules of Oath. And so this is things like alternate people's favor, alternate darkest secret, but also like new scoring systems in certain conditions that can allow the game states to get really different from each other. Some of these are very easy, and I know are going to work. Some of them, I have no idea if it's going to work. Like for example, I have an alternate cut of the people's favor, which I just have no. Like it'll be fine because it's a version of the people's favor that I thought was slightly too simplistic earlier in the development, and then I just kind of put on ice. And now, having seen all of what Oath is, I'm like, oh no, we could have a simpler people's favor. Sure. Part of what happened with the people's favor and the darkest secret, both of them in dev got very they got more complicated.
Yep.
But it was because it was actually a little bit of a playtesting syndrome, which we now know to avoid, which is that we had a core of testers who was playing the game a ton, and we were mostly building content for them.
Sure.
As opposed to like for a general,
Yeah.
for a general
I think
player.
that makes sense.
To that, we have a big stack of new cards that we're going to be looking at and evaluating. I think, oops, sorry, I just was playing with my mic because I thought it was like a bug or something. I was like, okay, something on my skin. That's funny. We have a new deck of cards that we're going to be vetting right now that players can either fold into their archive or they can put in the deck. And then there's some stuff that we're potentially exploring around a possible solo mode, which we have to make some there's a Patrick level decision that needs to be made,
Sure.
which will determine if we're going to do a new solo and potentially co-op mode. So lots of new Oath stuff.
I'm going to throw out mine too that I still feel this way once I get into that. Once you actually get into it. I'm personally interested in alternate Chancellors.
Yep, that is in there.
Yeah, I want like a different type of king I can play.
Yep. That is, yeah, so the way
Not the Chancellor, I want to be the Warmonger or
right,
whatever.
So so we have I'm like working on a couple different Chancellors.
Cole already did it, I guess.
No, but and potentially a no Chancellor.
Sure, yeah.
Like a straight no and a no citizen.
Sure.
So I have this, the way the Empire board is going to be stored is I kind of want like a tray, which you open up and they're just the Grand Scepter, which is what unlocks citizenship, is in that box.
Sure.
And you can turn on that switch or you can turn off that switch.
I see.
And having alternate, so there's some logical operators that's hey, Chancellor type, there's only one of these.
Right.
And so if you pick one, you need to put the other one back,
Totally.
and then it has some properties
Totally.
associated with it.
That makes sense.
There's some really, there's exciting stuff that I just don't know if it's going to work.
For sure.
Which we'll have to wait a little bit. Broadly though, and the fun challenge of it is trying to build an expansion which will not necessarily add more complexity to the game. And that's what I would like to do in the expansion box, however we package it, is to have a set of rules that says, hey, if you haven't played Oath in a long time, here's how you can reset up your game of Oath to play simple Oath.
Sure.
And so it does things like turns off citizenship.
Sure.
Turns off the relevance. It turns off all these little elements, because then you can kind of play Primeval Oath and get back into it, and then gradually earn all those baubles as you're playing.
Interesting. Very cool.
So yeah, just Oath stuff. So it's all still cooking. What needs to happen is I'm building proof of concept stuff for the next month, and then we will see if we can arrange it in some kind of product profile that makes sense, and then we'll start looking if we want to do it, where we're going to put on the schedule and all that stuff. So still a few months away from the deets. Did someone just ask a question about
You said you need a Puzzle Strike 2 wand. You can add one to Oath.
Yeah,
Puzzle Strike 2 wand.
just giant.
I'm about to bring my copy of Puzzle Strike 2 into the office.
It's in my office.
Well, I'm bringing mine in too.
Yeah, bring it in.
Mine's not getting played at home, so it's coming in.
It's coming in.
All right, what do we
well,
got?
let's go.
Next question about
one.
Puzzle Strike 2, it looks like.
Next question about Puzzle Strike 2. If you had to win a board game in order to save your life,
Dude,
which would you choose to
I
play?
asked my partner this morning this question because I was like, I don't think I'm good at games. So that's how
I
it
had the
started.
same.
No, seriously, I was like, which? And she's like, it wouldn't be this one. And I'm like, I agreed. We don't need to go through all the ones it wouldn't be. After more thinking, I think I'm currently going to have to go with Crokinole. I think Crokinole is that's my highest percentile I find myself in of games.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I think that's my of the percentile of games I'm in, I think I'm in the topmost of Crokinole, hopefully.
I love that.
Generally, people are less good at it than I am.
I am so bad at games.
It's
I'm
not a good
playing
feature.
a game of Nevsky right now in Rally the Troops, and I'm losing so badly. And I've been losing for so long, but we're playing the grand campaign, so I'm like months into this.
Sure.
loss. I'm just getting dragged.
Months into the loss. It's not that game.
I would
I didn't want to say one of our games because that felt lame also.
No, yeah, that's cheating.
Yeah.
Which of our games do you think you're best at?
I think I would say Fort.
Yeah, I don't think it's been a long time since I've beaten it.
I think I would say Fort. Yeah, I think Fort. I'm too in tune with the values in Fort, I think.
Yeah, I think my Arcs 2 player is good right now.
Ooh,
But
I'd love to play Arcs 2
the
player.
Arcs 2. We got the
I feel like
these-
there was one point in Arcs where I was a killer at one player with some dev versions, and then the game,
You can be-
and then they changed that version on you. You never know.
Arcs is one of those games that has like a very high skill ceiling.
Yeah.
So you could body someone.
You
in
really
Arcs.
can. Yeah.
I think this is a lame answer, but like probably Age of Steam.
Okay.
I think I have
Yeah.
I have played against really good people
Yeah.
in Age of Steam and done well.
Yeah.
But yeah, probably Age of Steam.
a good
Or
one.
maybe Great Zimbabwe, but probably Age of Steam.
That's a good one.
Also funny, like one of those games that I played probably 50 or 100 times a decade ago.
Right. You just hope something.
It just all comes back.
Some of
It
those
all
build
comes
strategies
back,
are
yeah.
certainly still hanging around, right? Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next
Let's
one
keep
now.
going. Yeah.
All right.
Oh.
Oh, I can't.
It was there for a
read it.
second. Hold on, I got my phone here. What efforts have leader games taken and will have to not get pigeonholed into the only certain mechanisms or themes, i.e. asymmetric games?
Well, what we've done is we hired one artist who will illustrate everything.
Yes.
And so we're digging the pigeonhole.
Yeah. We're gonna make a big hole is the
Yes.
idea. If the hole is everything, there's nothing else left.
When I first started, the very first Gen Con I ever worked, right, even before I had a job at the company, people would keep coming up to me and saying, "Oh, you guys do asymmetric games?" I'm like, "No, we do narrative games."
Right.
I felt like
Trying
I
to
was
switch
like
the-
guerrilla marketing. I didn't even talk to Patrick.
Yeah.
But like literally Gen Con, 2017, before anything had come out, except Vast, I was like, no, we're not just asymmetric games, because it seemed like an obvious trap.
Yes, correct. Yeah. No, I think. I mean, I'll say again, like we talked about earlier. I'd say I have mechanically, I'm far more interested in doing a lot of different stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I think whether or not the studio wants it, there will be that internal pressure from me at least
Yes.
to regularly be like, I really think we should do a
Yeah.
game that has this mechanism or this thing or isn't a fighting game. But like, yeah, I mean, it's tricky. I mean, we definitely talk about how we make conflict games. And it's
Yeah.
of course like Fort's not quite one, but like I think conflict games is certainly hard to say that we're not involved in, right? Like Arcs, is Arcs asymmetric? Is Oath asymmetric? Don't know. But like, are they conflict games? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And are we some of the meanest conflict games that are around right now? Probably.
So much meaner.
Yeah.
I really think about this in terms of this is that like reader response theory where we are making games and players are playing them,
Yep.
and then we're negotiating what our company's brand means all the time.
Yep, for sure.
We had many years ago, there was a marketing person on staff who really wanted to have like a meeting about brand identity, and Kyle would always say, "We don't get to decide that.
Yeah.
Like it's being decided for us constantly by the people who are playing the game, playing the games." And I completely agree with that. And I think that, if I think about the things that make our game special, and I always use the example of like the too hard for a small studio, too risky for a large studio, which doesn't really describe the type of game. It
Sure.
describes like the ethos of a project.
Sure.
But the things that I think are compelling are looking at a place that we think is underserved in the market that we think we could do really well, and
Sure.
then attacking that spot.
Yeah.
And I think conflict games, we've definitely done that. And I'll say to Fort's credit,
Yep.
I think, and I love deck builders,
Yeah.
I think a lot of deck builders are pretty boring and stale.
They're very derivative.
They're super
They're at
derivative.
least really derivative.
And
yeah.
I think Fort is the most interesting deck
Yep.
builder that has come out in a long time.
I still agree. Yeah, for sure. Yep.
And so, I was very excited when we got that game and we were able to publish it and people were able to play it, because I think it is doing something that like no one else was doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's that novelty thing again. I was
Right,
talking
yeah,
about. I was like,
it's
I'm so thrilled
so
with Fort
like
just
that-
because
yeah.
of how novel it really is. Yeah.
Right, and so like that novelty matters, but like it also interacts with like market pressure. So for example, we Patrick was working on this open world game, and the way I was looking at the open world game was like, well, we don't have an open world game, and open world games are kind of like emergent narrative games, which we do have.
Yep.
And the open world genre, for my money, is like kind of stale, where a lot of people are innovating in the open world genre, but they're innovating towards like app-assisted games and more
Sure.
written narrative. And I'm like, there might be room for actual mechanical, innovation.
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
So that there are places like kind of adjacent, but to me, like how we stop from getting pigeonholed is I think there's a real effort on everything we're working on, from Fort to Ahoy to Arcs, to participate in a conversation about what games can do. And as long as we stay in that conversation, we're not going to get pigeonholed. We're going to be in the conversation. Where I'd get worried is if we were like, okay, Route 2.
Sure.
Like, Arcs in some ways is an effort to follow up Root with another game of similar weight.
Right.
But Arcs is like not Root 2.
Right. I mean, in terms of us trying to avoid the pigeonhole, like we said, is like, you know, Ahoy could have been Root themed or something, right? If we were trying to. And there was a reason we didn't want to do that and that was because of like the mechanical space that we do feel that it actually differentiates. And like, I think even after launch, we've seen like, the audience react that way too. Like it is not the same thing, and the people aren't going to just take it because it's like, because you put a cat on it. You can't just put a cat on it, guys.
You can't just put a cat on it, and sometimes it involves like taking a risk. I mean, like Oath. So it's, you know, I'll go back to Fort and just say something else, which is when we were working on Oath, we were doing a game that was heavier than Root and a game that had this like legacy chronicle element.
Yeah.
And we were working on Oath. We were like, there aren't any games like Oath. I don't know if anyone's going to like this game.
Yep.
And Fort was actually like almost a hedge where we were like, what happens if we do a really innovative game that's smaller?
Yeah.
And we can kind of do both of them. And both of them did fine.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think like the pattern of the studio has been to continue making risky games.
Yeah.
And that excites me.
Yeah.
And as long as it keeps exciting the audience, then we'll keep doing it.
Yeah, I definitely would say I think it's important to try to do a lot of different stuff, and I'm excited about what we're trying to do next, I guess. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that pretty much brings it to the end. Let's see, what time is it?
Yeah, it's 3.
Oh goodness, it's 3. I've got another interview.
And then this man's got to go.
Yeah, we gotta get out of here. Thank you all for coming by for our little Q&A stream.
Yeah.
If you are an ARCS backer, keep an eye on your inbox. Sometime in the next few weeks, we'll share some pictures of the final NPC for the campaign mode. If you are an Ahoy backer, know that the PMP is coming soon, within a week or so.
Yep.
And if you're interested in the future stuff, I think we're probably 2 or 3 months away from any kind of like big announcement, but we'll probably have more stuff to share next month. So hopefully we'll see you all here on the first Tuesday of March.
Sounds good.
All right, take care, everybody.
Bye, y'all.